Can you not show your bottom? How to record? Hey guys, welcome back to Virtual Vertex. In today's video, we're going to talk about my journey as a 3D artist into the games industry and how I managed to secure a job as a junior 3D artist at Dovetail Games during a global pandemic. So first of all, why am I making this video? Well, I want to go through my own personal journey, kind of the ups and downs and the kind of processes and approaches that I took from feedback, lots of negative responses, job rejections and so forth. And you know, a lot of people do give up, unfortunately. Even though they're getting closer and closer to landing it, they give up. And I want to kind of talk about how you can use those as building blocks to propel your own work rather than treating them as a barrier and as a negative thing. So hopefully by the end of this video and me blabbering on a bit about myself and my journey, I can give you some tips and tricks and hopefully motivate you to keep pushing forward in your dreams and, you know, land that job that you want. So without further ado, the first thing we're gonna take a look at is kind of my progression of my 3D art. So we'll look at where it was at the start, which is extremely poor and really bad, to where it is now and how I got there through these different steps, which I'll talk about. So without further ado, let's get looking at some of my work. So on screen now, obviously you can see my very first lots of 3D work and kind of where it all began. Obviously starting off with a box, purpose being to learn the kind of navigations of the programs that I was working with, that being 3ds Max, and also it allows you to get a good understanding of how to work with UVs and the whole process there, because obviously a box being probably the kind of easiest asset to unwrap. From there, keeping the shapes basic, I moved on to a robot character, which was heavily inspired by a super old game called Metal Arms. That was a lot of fun. I don't know if anyone can remember that. If you do, comment down below. And then from there, we popped our character into an environment. And in this environment, it was again learning all of the basics, but also kind of how you can create a cohesive kind of piece in one. And then obviously you can see there's a lot of amateur noobish mistakes everywhere. There's some extreme texture warping, especially on the floor textures, but you know, creating this scene was a lot of fun and a great learning experience, and really drove me into the idea that the environment art is something that I wanted to focus on rather than say characters. Now jumping forward to my final university project. To summarize it, it was a VR space sim around a little asteroid base, and the main reason I want to talk about this one is a lot of things went wrong and I was very stubborn in my approach and what I wanted to do. So at the time I was a big fan of VR and I was trying to force myself to kind of utilize at the time this like kind of new magic fancy tech, which ended up biting me in the back. Inevitably I wasn't very happy with the final project. The main reason for that is I simply spread myself too thin with too many different tasks, from the environment itself to the character and ship, and then obviously implementing the VR setup inside of Unreal Engine, and then doing a custom script to control the ship as well. So it's crazy, way too much. Looking back at it, what I would recommend anyone would do over your, you know, if you're doing a course that's 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it may be, take what you most enjoy and the kind of direction that you want to do in your career. So me wanting to be a 3D artist, environment artist primarily, I would have and should have just done a closed scene and really focused on honing in my skills on creating an environment that I would be happy with, rather spending just 20% of my overall time. And I could have had something that was, say, 2, 3, 4 times better. So hopefully you can learn from that mistake and not make the same mistake I did, and just focus on your area of expertise where you want your career to be. And a second bit of advice is to actively look for internships and placements at the studios near you. The main reason for this is a lot of them only allow current standing students to do internships there, so it's something that you should take full advantage of. And then obviously once you graduate and you've got that internship on your CV or portfolio, it gives you a strong advantage ahead of anyone else in the same position after graduating. And obviously you can find these sorts of internships at most companies such as Ubisoft, EA and Activision, as you can see pictured behind on the background. So now you've graduated uni, this is where a lot of the hard work will begin. This is where you will have to find tutorials and improve your own skills as a 3D artist in whatever area that would be. Because the competition is tough, you're not gonna, or very rarely will you learn that job right after graduating, unless you can, like I said, get that internship and then hopefully get a graduate role with the studios that you've been working with previously. So in the background footage you should be able to see my first two portfolio pieces after graduating. The first one being the sailing ship being attacked by a kraken, which is a lot of fun, but the main problem with that is not environmental focused, and that's the main thing that I want to do. Obviously moving on from there, I started working on the building a palace of culture in Chernobyl, and this was to learn the kind of theory behind modular workflows and then implementing those inside of the Unreal Engine. Now next, obviously after being working on my portfolio for weeks and in the background constantly applying for every single job under the sun, I finally got my very first art test, which you can see here. It's a low poly kind of hand painted stylized character and environment, and this was obviously from the art style, you can probably tell it was for a mobile studio. Now from this you could say I had my first negative experience interacting with recruiters and studios. So I'll go through the whole story. I was sent out the art test, the kind of the brief, and then I spent the next 2 days recreating the piece that you can see behind. All of this was then uploaded to a drive and sent away, and that essentially was it. It ended there. I had no feedback, no response from the recruiter. I did reach out a couple of times, and obviously that, after spending so much time, makes you feel like poop, because you spent all this time, you've finally got that art test, but it happens. You don't know. You can see what you want about the recruiters, but you don't know the full story, right? They might have left the job and then no one continued to pick it up, or the studio no longer wanted to hire for the position, and I was kind of left out. But on the bright side, you've got to remember this is your first art test, so you've progressed to the next step. Your portfolio's getting better, because you're getting responses, and they sent out the art test in the first place. So although there was a lot of the negatives and kind of being left hanging and not being able to get the feedback, you're still progressing, and there's still the positive sides that you can take from that, in that you actually got the art test, and that's a challenge in itself. So you got to give yourself a pat on the back and build upon that. So after the art test that I've just done, I thought about how I can take my work to the next step, because I know I'm getting closer, I'm getting more responses, I'm getting art tests themselves. It might not be the response that we want, but we know people are looking at my work. I just need to push it a little bit further. So in my opinion, looking back at it, the way to do that was to really learn the systems inside of the engines that I was using, and at the time that was Unreal Engine. So for me to achieve this, I set myself a pretty ambitious project, and that being the dystopian sci-fi environment that you can see behind you here. In this environment, it contained a huge variety of different aspects, from the different blueprint systems to setting up navigation, animation within your assets. You've got the tarps, which use a cloth simulation, so they're kind of fluttering in the wind. and as well I spent a lot of time learning the Unreal Engine lighting systems and how to take advantage of emissive textures. Then with everything I've learned in the Unreal Engine escapades, I started to make a more refined scene, that being this underground Hungarian train tunnel. As you can see, it's more focusing on getting the textures and the overall feel of the environment correct. In addition to working on overall environments, I also started doing a lot more focus on individual prop work, like we can see with the phone here, with a deep concentration on getting the textures just right, as well as the shapes and the overall effectiveness and quality of the modeling. So again, after spending the weeks after my first art test to develop my skills, both modeling side and engine side inside of Unreal Engine, I landed an interview at Streamline Studios in Malaysia, which was super exciting at the time. And then obviously the first interview went extremely well, and then we progressed to the second part, which was the art test, which you can see on screen behind you now, which was kind of based off a workbench reference. And I kind of took that to kind of be more feeling like a carpenter's bench. As you can see there, he's chiseling away and creating chairs. Unfortunately, as well as the first interview went, and as well as I felt the art test went, I did not get the role. Fortunately, they were a great bunch of people, and I managed to get a lot of feedback. But the biggest thing I could take from this was the experience that I managed to gain in the interviews that I had with them, speaking with their recruiters and art team, who were absolutely great people, and that helped me build up my confidence for any future interviews and be prepared for how to approach them. So the next big bit of advice I want to give to you is work on your social networking. Obviously, in the background, I've been working on my portfolio, my skills, my modeling, texturing, improving that constantly, but I've also been working on my social networking on Twitter and LinkedIn, reaching out to other artists and producers. It might feel like nagging, but sometimes you'll come across really nice people who are more than happy to give you feedback and advice to improve your work. And luckily, I reached out to the right people, and I managed to get some work at Deadlift Game Studios, working on the environments with them, as you can see in the background here on their combat mech race that they're working on. So yeah, it's a multi-pronged attack. You're working on yourself, your work, but you've also got to be doing that networking, and sometimes with a bit of luck and persistence, it can prevail. So now I'm working with a small indie studio. I've got some work, but that's not where you stop. I wanted to keep pushing myself forward and keep learning, and the pieces you can see on the video now are my continued progression. I continued to work on my texturing, my modeling, my work within the Unreal Engine, which is what all of these set pieces I could end up in for the final renders. So then after this continued hard work, I've continued to improve my work. I then got my first interview at Dovetail Games, and I got really close, but I was not successful. But after speaking with the team and how lovely they were, I really knew Dovetail Games was the place that I wanted to focus on and start my career, which is where the next step comes in how to build your portfolio. So after the interview, I went back. I felt really comfortable and confident that Dovetail was where I wanted to work. So the first thing I do is create a piece directed at the studio, and this is something everyone should do, and I recommend you do think about the kind of studio you want to work at, their art style, what they focus on, and produce a really nice piece focusing on kind of what their games are. Around this time is also when I started this YouTube channel, Virtual Vertex, and there were numerous reasons for this. One, I wanted to share the knowledge that I've learned and help beginners and those new to 3D develop the basic skills to get started on their career paths. And also it's a good way to network myself and get my work and myself seen out there to a lot wider audience. and hopefully I can keep inspiring artists and help build up this channel and a community with everyone involved. Then finally, after 3 years of hard work and perseverance, I managed to land my dream job at Dovetail Games. And obviously this wasn't an easy journey, and I want this video to kind of show that you know, you've got to be persistent, you've got to push yourself and drive yourself to the next level and keep going, and eventually you will get there because hard work pays off. So you've made it to the end of the video. Let's go over some key points of advice that you can take away from this. 1. While you're at uni or studying, 100% try and get an internship. It will give you a huge advantage over anyone else after graduating. 2. Focus the final project on the job role that you want to fulfill in the game industry. Don't make the same mistakes that I did and try and do too much of everything within one project. 3. While trying to learn and develop your skills, focus on one at a time. My 4th tip would be to get social networking. Talk to artists on LinkedIn, get feedback, join Discord channels. There's loads of Discord channels like the Dynasty, the Punisher, and there's awesome people in there who'll give you advice and feedback on the work you're doing and help you out. And the last and probably most important tip is just hard work and persistence. At the end of the day, it's only yourself that can push you to the next level. So just keep up the hard work and keep going forward. Every obstacle or setback turn into a stepping stone, as I've done in this video and done in my own career path. So guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found the content in this video super useful and inspiring to keep on developing and producing your own 3D art. So if you want to see more content on 3D and the games industry, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.